We have a question from a spiritual seeker. I would like to ask you about something that is confusing me a lot. I have been through an experience that is somehow similar to what you speak about, but it's also significantly different, I think. The experience that the seeker here is talking about is of uh, feeling lazy and unmotivated to do anything, with the lack of meaning and purposelessness after spiritual awakening. And for those of you who have not gone through that video, I will link it in the description for you. So, seeing that video, he's put his query, which is, my awakening seems to have been triggered by an emotional trauma. After about 4 months since the event, I got taken over by overwhelming sensation in the body. I'm not sure if they could be described as Kundalini awakening. Intense emotions of joy and gratitude and unconditional love, heart opening, and a lot of spontaneous imagery of devotional worship that I have never ever even thought about before in my life. I was not a spiritual person or a seeker. The experience has been very pleasant overall, lasting around a week. I didn't feel the need to sleep or eat during this period. So I have been fasting for the last 3 days. Then, when I decided to end the fast, the whole experience started to fade. Now I'm trying to make sense of what it was. A lot of pain is coming up again, shame, especially, and mistrust. My mind is struggling with a lot of chaos. And to be honest, I have no idea whether I have experienced a psychotic episode or spiritual awakening. I was feeling exactly like being deeply in love, just not with a person. Now I feel like I might have made it up all somehow. Can you help me get some clarity, please? Somehow we have this idea that spiritual experiences and experience that one encounters in life are different. That a psychotic experience is somehow different from a spiritual experience. And that psychotic experience is completely worthless, it has no point. And a spiritual experience has to be a profound experience, a grand experience. From what I understand and what my experience has been, that after spiritual awakening, now again in the video where I talk about the problems that one encounters after spiritual awakening, is that there is a crack in the structure of the personality. The person cracks and the light of wholeness shines. So, of course, a lot of worldly patterns are broken. And mind, which lives in time, is not yet synced with the reality of what has happened. Because awakening is timeless, it is a glimpse of the timelessness. And mind still operates in time. So, mind, being complex entity it is, has in the deep psyche certain patterns which still continue even after the awakening has happened. It is a misconception that awakening will bring equanimity, peace, and joy instantly. It does bring equanimity and peace, but in my experience, it takes time. And this is what Ramesh Balsekar called deliverance. He said that awakening is always instantaneous. Something just happens, a crack happens into the personality, and then the mind is confused. Why? Because it says, I have invested so much in the past and in my future fantasies. How dare you tell me that I am not true, that I am not real? So mind revolts because it is completely tied up with past identifications, with past knowledge, my religion, my life, my traumas, what I have experienced and gained in the past, my future aspirations, what I demanded from the world, my expectations, my relationships, all of that facade that the mind creates begins to break down, which is of course painful, and sometimes mind can act psychotic too. But who is to say that that is not spiritual? If we look at that from the spiritual angle, we will have more compassion towards ourselves and towards people who go through that. But when we create this division that this is a mental health issue and that is a spiritual issue, so mental health has to be separately dealt with, spiritual issue has to be separately dealt with, then we create these bifurcations, these compartmentalizations, which do not help anybody. Now, I'm not saying that the psychological challenges are not there, and I'm not even saying that experts are irrelevant. No, there are psychological challenge, and there are people who are qualified to address that. And I do see that also as a spiritual work. But none of these things are isolated. When there is an emotional crisis, a psychological crisis, then there is always a spiritual crisis waiting underneath it. It is primarily a spiritual crisis which leads to the other types of issues. And what is that spiritual crisis? That spiritual crisis is, who am I? Fundamentally, this entity that I call me, myself, my needs, my life, who is this me? And this me, having experienced a dent, a crack in its structure, is now confused. And that confusion, where one experiences moments of joy, gratitude, unconditional love on one hand, and then a debilitating pain, suffering, confusion, conflict on the other hand. Sometimes I feel that I'm loved. Other times I feel I'm completely hated, that I'm not loved, that my existence here is pure suffering. And this period in the classic texts have been described as the dark night of the soul. It is a process where ego is finally merging towards dissolution. The ego is the separative entity which thinks it has a name and a form as a separate entity. It believes in its separateness, and that separateness is the cause of suffering. So I do not think that ending the fast has got anything to do with the suffering that the seeker is experiencing here. What exactly is happening is that something has been cracked. Something that believed itself to be solid. Because we always say, oh, I am here, this is me, I am real. But we do not question what is the nature of this me, because this me is not our constant experience. There is no me in deep sleep. In dream state, the me is distorted, completely distorted. Although in dream state, the me does borrow elements from the waking state, but it is completely different story going on in the dream world. So which world is real? Is the waking world real or the dream world real? But if one goes deeper, one can see that there is a substratum to both the waking and the dream state, which in the scriptures has been called Turya. Complete blankness, nothingness, pure experiencing. In deep sleep, you experience yourself as pure experience, where you experience even the absence of sense objects. And that pristine awareness is our true nature. So, in other words, when we are in deep sleep, we undergo awakening every night. And if we do not experience that deep sleep state, we cannot function properly in the waking state. And I'm sure it does affect the dream state as well. Because the deep sleep is the substratum, it is the base. It is like the ocean, the vast ocean, which allows the waves to play. Now, the waves can be emotions, sensations, feelings, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, whatever, anything that creates a ripple, anything that creates an amplitude is an arising. But the nature of arising is impermanent. So even the emotions like shame, which the seeker is experiencing here, is an arising from the base of the ocean. But you are the ocean, you are not the wave. Wave is just a manifestation. Now, what is happening here? There is a dent in the structure, there is a crack in your structure, personality structure. So the mind has become quiet. Mind at the surface level has become quiet. Now, when the mind at the surface level becomes quiet, stuff from the deeper mind, from the unknown, begins to crop up as patterns that are stored from our childhood. It could be a childhood trauma, it could be an emotional trauma, it could be hidden shame, guilt, anything. All those things begin to emerge. And then we feel that the awakening was supposed to be a pleasant experience, but why is this happening? This is happening because the separate self or the ego is the complete mind structure, the conscious and the unknown. It is complete. It is like an iceberg. It is not limited to the portion that is above the sea level. It also includes the portion that is below the sea level and which is vast. And for that portion to come in harmony with the top portion, it takes a little bit of time. So those patterns are being illuminated in the light of awareness now, because the conscious mind is now rooted into the present moment. So stuff is going to come up. What can we do about it? Now, there will be certain level of suffering associated with it, which cannot be prevented, unfortunately. But this pointer helps. Now, I'm not saying it is a cure to dark night of the soul, but it does help. What one can do is lovingly allow all the shame, pain, all the pain, the shame, the guilt, the malice, whatever is coming up from below, and hold it in a compassionate, loving energy. The idea is that I am not experiencing any shame. It is not me that is experiencing shame. The shame is simply an arising in consciousness. The blame, the guilt, whatever patterns that one sees in the conscious surface of the mind are patterns arising not to a specific person, but they are simply patterns. Just all is happening. And it is not happening to any individual person. Therefore, I always say awakening does not happen. The person does not awaken. The awakening happens. A person who says, I am awakened, is still caught up, is not the awakening has not happened there. He is still caught up in the ego's game, which is that I am awakened. There is no I that awakens. The break in the structure of the I, the break in the movement of the I is awakening. Now, generally, the flow of I is I am this, I am that, this is my life, this is the way things should be, I want things to be that way, I want life, I want good relationships, I want money, I want recognition, I want higher status in society, I want to be successful in my career. It can be, the I flows in multiple directions. And the root of all of that is it extends to the unknown. So, of course, all of this comes up. But when awakening happens, not to the person, but when the awakening happens and the person is cracked, there is a crack between this link of the conscious and the unknown. Now, the conscious is clear. So, whatever arises from the unknown finds manifestation in the light of awareness. And sometimes that can be troubling for the body, for the nervous system. So, if one can just simply witness without any judgment whatever is arising, the shame is not my personal. The shame is a pattern that happened probably many years back, probably when I was a child. But I did not create that shame. That shame was created due to circumstances that were not in my control. This is the idea. When the sense of individual existence is low, when the identification with the persona is low because of a crack in the structure, because the light of awakening has already facilitated that, then one does not take these things personally. It is not my personal responsibility to get rid of it, because the more I put effort trying to get rid of it, the more shame becomes prominent. These patterns do not get eliminated when your association with them, when your relationship with them is that I am the one who's holding the pattern. When you think that it is your pattern, it could be anything. It could be a maladaptive behavior, for example. When you say that it is me, it is my fault, I am broken, then you begin with that assumption that I am broken, and you try to fix what is broken, and it cannot be fixed. Because that me, that separate self, is already a fragmented entity. It is already a broken entity. So there is no point in trying to fix that. But let everything arise in the spacious awareness. And as Nisargadatta Maharaj says, whatever comes in the light of conscious awareness burns. That energy burns and gets dissipated. So it is not your responsibility to handle that. All you need to do is just observe and let things be the way they are. And then, excuse me, and then the dark night of the soul ends. It doesn't have to go on for years. The pain after awakening doesn't have to go on for years, for decades. You can drop it right this instant. And one way is to just be here now. There is no method or practice as such. Whenever the remembrance comes, whenever you remember that the thinking is happening, that your attention to all of this stuff which is emerging from the unknown is happening, just be here. totally in this moment, and this whole energy will dissipate and one will feel naturally relaxed. So I would say whatever is happening is very natural. I don't think it is a psychotic episode. I feel that it is a spiritual episode. Something is being dissolved and the source is facilitating that. So why interfere in source's work? But just surrender to whatever is happening. And of course, as he has mentioned, that it just feels love. It is all love. Even these patterns that we abhor so much are all made up of love. The substratum, the base of it is love. But the problem is we fight. We want to avoid. We want to escape. Sometimes we engage in activities to escape our mind when these patterns come up. It can be anything. It can be reading, watching TV, engaging in a sexual activity, or anything. But when we pay total attention to whatever is arising, what we see is that the consciousness, the substratum, the base, and its content are one and the same. There is no separate person here that is trying to fix himself or herself, but it is all happening in the vastness, in the awareness, in the consciousness. And consciousness is the only reality. So I would say that let it all happen. If something is too problematic or too uncomfortable and you feel that you need external help, then by all means do that. But know that it is not happening to you. It is simply a happening. So those are my thoughts on this subject. I hope this helps.